So I'll move to make an addition to the board agenda after the call to order, well, after the approval of the agenda and before our esteemed Mr. Reuter's report, that we add an item for public comments. And with that addition, I move approval of the amended agenda.
Second.
Second.
You, first Ann, second John, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we have the amended agenda, so we need to see if anybody would like to make comments first. Okay, is there anybody in the audience that needs to make a comment before we proceed?
No comment.
nobody signed
Yes,
up.
we have no commenters. So we had some guests, and we want to make sure if they came here to do that, but okay, thank you.
All right, next up is to approve the agenda.
But we
Which
did.
we changed. Okay, so the mic.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. I'm gonna actually stand up by the screen and point. My laser pointer isn't moving on the screen, so good to see everyone again. This is just an early report before you enter the budget process, so no actions required of you this evening. This is pure for information only and what we might be heading into. Let's see here. Let me get my clicker. The last legislative session was a short session, but there was actually something that happened that's actually pretty big in terms of what they're allowing the maximum levies to increase. Maximum levy means the amount your property tax levy will be increasing in 2027. We've been, you've heard me say this before, the 6-year non-farm personal income factor of the state, that is the actual calculation the state uses to determine how much they're going to allow your levy to increase each year. And this actually goes back to 2008, when they went through the last property tax reform. The thought process at that time was they really didn't want income of the state, or excuse me, they really didn't want property tax increasing faster than income. So they linked the amount they were going to allow levies to grow to the income. And that made sense actually for quite some time. Now I will tell you, it's a 6-year average. Okay, so maybe the thought process, it takes all the peaks and valleys out of that. But we had something very unique happen in the years 2020 and 2021, in that the income of the state of Indiana jumped pretty significantly. And if you rewind, if you think back, that was the pandemic, and the federal government had pushed a lot of money out, trying to prop the economy up to keep things going. And so what that did though, is it drove up the 6-year non-farm personal income factor higher than what the state wanted to allow in property tax. And for the last 3 years meaning 26, 25, and 24, they have said, all right, we're going to calculate the 6-year non-farm personal income factor, but it cannot be more than 4%. And so I was fully expecting that to happen again this last session, because I knew it was going to go up close to 6% if they didn't do that. But that didn't happen. And so there was no cap. Representative Thompson actually introduced that. It failed. It did not get passed. And so we go back now. We're back to pre-caps, in that the 6-year non-farm personal income factor is back in play. And it actually is, I'm forecasting it to decline, but this is the actual calculation. And you can see going back to 2020, it was 3.5, 4.2, 4.3, 5, 5.5. 25, it got the 6% is 6.4 because of what I mentioned earlier, because of 20 and 21, that went up pretty significantly. You can see here in the green, even though the factor was higher, it was capped at 4%. That cap went away going into 27, and so we're going to see an increase in the levy of 6%. That doesn't apply just to you. That applies to the cities and the towns and the county and the townships and the libraries and the school operating funds. And so you would not be unique in collecting the full 6%. I fully anticipate them, most everyone will collect the full 6%. But what that means is that it's higher property tax, right? At a time, the state is trying to dampen the impact of property tax. Obviously, in 2025, the long session, it was all about property tax reform, and Senate Enrolled Act included higher property deductions for homeowners. It included eliminating business personal property less than $2 million. It involved giving rental property a deduction between now and 2031 of 33%. So it was all about property tax reform built into the Senate Enrolled Act 1, but this really goes against the grain of that. So that's good and bad. It's good that we're going to get 6% new dollars, but I have a concern that in the next session, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about property tax again, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. But you can see though that even into the next year, then I'm forecasting that it would be 5.4% before it goes back down to 4, because you're now getting away from that 2020, 2021. Personally, I think it should be a 3-year average, not a 6-year, because when the economy goes into a recession, we're still living off the prior 6 years. But when the economy comes out of a recession, we're living in the recession because you're pulling all that in there. So it seems like they should have a factor that's a little more reactive to what's happening currently. But
I feel like you were making that point after the 2009 recession.
yeah, that's right. So it's slow to go up and it's slow to come down. And so anyway, it's good news, but in the fiscal plan, you all have a fiscal plan. EJ was kind enough to put it into a PowerPoint for me. In the fiscal plan, I'm making these assumptions, but don't be surprised if the 4% cap comes back in 28. That we may not see that 5.4% increase. Now, if it happened in 29, we're not talking about a huge difference, but 28 could have another cap imposed. We'll see. The next page is the assessed valuation, and unfortunately, we had this PowerPoint put together Friday, and I just received some information today, early indicators what the assessed valuation might be doing. And so we've used 0 in the modeling in the fiscal plan. We knew it wasn't going to go up, but it actually is probably going to go down around 1 point, a little better 1.5 to 1.7%. It's not certified yet. So that's not unexpected, because even though property values are going up, the deductions are going up for homeowners. And I'm going to fast forward to the year 2031. By the year 2031, home values will only be paying on 1/3 of the value of their home. So I'll use quick math. If you got a $600,000 home, by 2031, a homeowner will only be paying on $200,000 of the value of that home. So a lot of the tax base is getting erased because of those new deductions. And you also have, as I mentioned, apartments and farmers, not much farm ground left in Clay Township, but they are getting new deductions that would start at 0, and they're going to 33%. And then again, you had business personal property. So you have all these pieces working against the tax base. And so we're going to likely see continued declines in the assessed valuation between now and 2031. Now, that really doesn't actually mean a whole lot to you in the sense of your revenue, because your maximum levy will be what the maximum levy is, whatever that 6-year non-farm personal income factor is. And your debt levy will have to be X number of dollars in the debt fund to make your debt payment. The only impact to you is the tax rate. And you're going to see tax rates across the state increasing pretty significantly. Because if you have, let's just use the zero, if you have a 6% increase in your levy and you have zero AV growth, your tax rate is gonna go up 6% on your operating fund because of that. And so that's what you're going to see happening. And that will not be a surprise to legislators. Actually, they expect that to happen. So don't ask me why, but it will not be so much about a rate conversation going forward, where we have for many years focused on tax rate. When we redid bonds, we were always focused on the tax rate, that we weren't going to collect more than we did in previous years, but it's going to be more of a conversation about the levy, how much we're actually collecting in property tax. So as you can see, we had seen really nice increases in 23, 24, and 25. And homeowners felt that, right? They felt their values going up and they were paying more. Your levy was actually only going up 4%, right? But their tax bills were going up more than that because their assessments were going up. And so there was a shifting of who was paying the bill from commercial to residential. Residential is now paying more of the overall tax bill than what had previously been paid. So that is a confusion point for a lot of folks. The next, so we talked about property tax. Now, this is actually really good news too. So we're still on the old system. Senate Enrolled Act 1 in 25 is completely revamping local option income tax going forward. But for now, between now and 2028, the old model is still in place. And it was extended. It was originally supposed to be implemented in 28. But in the short session, they extended that a year. They said, no, we're not going to put new rates in until 2029. And don't be surprised if that conversation doesn't come back up yet as well, because there's still confusion around the transition year going from one model to a new model. And cities and towns will be able to impose their own rates, which they've not been able to do before. But right now, we're still working on under the old system. And for me, what I'm always focused on is this column. This is the actual collection column. And the reason this one's important to me is because we always reconcile back to the real number. When we get a number out here in this certified distribution column, it's just a number. It's basically, they report whatever is collected between July 1 and June 30th of the prior year. So for 27, our budget number for 27 will be based on July 1, 2025 through June 30th, 2026. Now, I will tell you that number is up pretty significantly, like 9%. They're saying 9% growth in that number. That's pretty big for the county. But it really isn't just a budget number, because we always reconcile back to this. And you may say, well, why are we talking about 2024? That was so long ago. Don't we know 25? Well, we don't. I mean, we just filed our returns, and in April, people file for extensions. The state really doesn't know how much has been collected yet for the year, the real number, calendar year 25. And so I'm actually using conservative estimates going forward here. But what we saw is a huge increase in 24. That was a big increase. But you might recall me last year when I reported to you, I said, I'm not saying this is wrong, but our collections for Hamilton County are only up 2.8%. Seems really strange for a county like this. I mean, you would think income alone without people moving in had been higher than 2.8%. I inquired with the Department of Revenue, and they won't release any of the data because it's all protected. It's, returns. I inquired and they said, well, there were some large taxpayers that actually did not get included in the 23 number. And you might be happy with 24. Well, that showed up. So if I had to speculate, what we had here is not that this really didn't happen, that this is a timing issue of some returns, that the returns that got turned in 24, probably some of those should have been in 23. And you probably have a real blended average of those 2 years there. But I've never been super comfortable with lit because of these things. When you just look at the history, 15.7, 2.8, 4.6, almost 20%. That's really, that doesn't seem logical, you know, to someone. You'd think you'd have a fairly consistent pattern in a county like this. You have people moving in, you'd have natural cost of living increases in your income. But nevertheless, this is what they report to us. But what happens is once they give us the calendar year number, they reconcile back to what they distributed. And if they distributed it a lower number, they send out a special distribution. And so our special distribution, because of this almost 16% increase, we saw the largest special distribution that we'd ever seen. And that was this year, and that came in at the end of May. Comes in one check and it comes in at the end of May. So when you look at revenue for you got a 6% increase in your levy, and we're seeing 9% increase in income. 27 is going to be a pretty good budget year in terms of revenue. So now, obviously, you only get a portion of that. And right now you're getting in 26, 1.6%. If you rewind, you were getting a bigger portion of that when you had your bonds included, but those are no longer included. But it's leveled off at 1.6% now. And so this is also something important. In today, the libraries as a whole, all the libraries combined, get 3.8% of the whole lit pie. There's a 1% pie. It's distributed to all the units in the county based on the prior year property tax levy and the prior year distribution. And so when you look at libraries, you're getting 3.8%. Under the new model, it changes to a population-based allocation. And so even though if the county adopts 0.038, you're still going to see a big decrease because it goes to population and not levy.
Brings in the same amount of total dollars, but
Yes.
distributed differently.
The maximum rate, and this is where you'd want to lobby. I mean, obviously, the higher the rate, the more you're made whole. The highest rate the county under current legislation is 0.05. Right now in Hamilton County, all combines 0.038. So I think, I can't speak for the council. Obviously, that's a decision they're going to have to make sometime between July 1 of 28 and October 1 of 28. They'll have to make a decision of what rate they would impose for the libraries. They'll have to do it for townships as well, and small cities and small towns, excuse me. So there's a lot of time between now and that time that they're going to have to make the decision. But what you would at least hope is that they would adopt the 0.038 rate, which is what your current allocation.
If they're on a fiscal year calendar, is it July?
So no, it will be a calendar year rate. So the new rates, the new lit rates get adopted in 28, they get imposed in 29. And so it's still a calendar year collection. So when someone looks at their paycheck, it's wherever they live January 1. And it's the rates then of whatever's adopted.
So you said that we would go to them after July 1 and 28.
So July 1, between July 1, 28 and October 1/28.
That's when they have to actually set the rate.
They actually have to set the rates.
So we will have already gone to them and made our pitch well before.
Yes, yes. Likely the conversation, for one, I think you will want to see what happens in the next legislative session. Maybe nothing happens for libraries, maybe it just stays like that. But obviously, another session will be passed, and you really my speculation is you'll really want to get serious about the conversation probably in the spring of 28 before they have to adopt those rates. But I can't see too many people wanting to run out right now and say, oh, we're gonna adopt these rates. Yeah, it's just a little early yet for people to be making a commitment like that, so.
Yeah,
So we have some time to keep watching this, and if the income of the county keeps going up like that rate, that's going to make up for a lot of what you are at least trying to get whole. So just to give you some idea here, you're in 28, I was forecasting you're gonna be about 4.8 million. In the new model, you would go down to $3.7 billion. So it's a pretty big decrease. But your budget's actually in balance enough right now that loss can be absorbed. So we'll talk about that here in a minute. Oops. Oops, got a point here. Oh, maybe it went to sleep on me.
and now you,
There we go. There we go. So when you just look at your lit over time, you see it's been going up, but then we'd have this reset out there in the future, potential reset. But this is what it would look like. 0.038, I'm estimating would generate about $12.9 million. That would be the pool that the libraries that share. And this is based on the population right now of 2020. Okay, so, and then it's just a percentage of that pie. So you take the $12.9 million and you prorate it based on the population.
isn't Westfield, they're doing a mid-decade census to
Yeah.
get new numbers.
That's a good question yet, by the way. Not always does special census numbers mean distribution formulas change. But that's a good question if somebody does a special census, because remember now, Westfield Washington Library and Westfield Town are not the same boundaries.
Hmm.
And so, that's a little bit, yeah, so I don't know. It will just say decennial census, which that means 2030 will be the next decennial census. And that would be an adjustment, but whether special census would play into that going forward, I don't think anybody's asked that question yet, but my
If it
guess.
does plan, then that could lead to other places doing mid-decade.
Yeah, yeah. You have to be growing enough to justify the cost. Special census
Yeah.
are expensive.
And Westfield clearly is growing.
Yeah, you have to be going at a pretty good pace to justify the cost, and you have to have enough runway. In other words, enough years left. Your revenue goes up, but you gotta pay for that cost. You have to have enough years to repay the cost of that special census. Fishers used to do it years ago. That's not of their value now, but when they were growing, they used to do special census, a couple of them between.
Yes. And so we can see in your numbers, so you're projecting 2030 to 3.8 million.
Yeah,
But if the law hadn't changed, if we continued on the current, that would be.
yes, it'd
Would
be
be
4,
5
yeah,
million.
probably, could probably close to the 4.7.
And here's a distinction too,
Yeah,
when I was
would-
looking at these numbers with EJ, if theoretically they set the maximum rate of 0.05%, which would be an increase, a tax increase, but if they did that, we still would collect less than we currently do under the current law.
Yeah, current formula, the current law is in your favor right now. The new law, population based, does not work as well for normal. Now, this is the general fund page. So if you were looking in the fiscal plan, this is creating the fiscal plan for the general fund. And I always tell people the most important line on here is about almost at the bottom, 3/4 of the way down. It says excess deficit revenues over expenditures, and that basically tells you if your budget's in or out of balance. And so you can see here that with the exception of 2022, your budget has been in balance by a couple $1,000,000 a year. So hypothetically, if that drops as much as it was projected, you have some room to absorb that loss having to, without having to drastically alter your services. So, now in some cases, you see negative numbers down here at the bottom, there were where you took action to move some of those dollars to rainy day. You had spent some rainy day and you took action to make up some of those dollars. But you can see in 26, right now that we're forecasting another $2,000,000 surplus in 26. And when you look at 27's budget, you're still in balance by about 2.2 million. But think about it, you got a big increase in your lit, and you got 6% new.
Right, and that's not always gonna happen.
That's not always going to happen. Now, here's something interesting too, that Senate Enrolled Act 1 is doing, is these higher value homes are no longer hitting the circuit breaker. Because the deductions that are getting put on, the percentages are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and so there's fewer people hitting the circuit breaker. Look, your loss to the circuit breaker now in 26 is only $31,000. That is such a small number compared to anybody else in the state. So it's amazing. So when you collect $1, you're basically collecting $1. A lot of places are losing a portion of that to the circuit breaker. They can't collect it because their rates are too high. Now we have this was part of Senate Enrolled Act 2, Senate Enrolled Act 1 also, is we have the new homestead credit. And so that was really kind of a last minute thing at the end of the session. They were still trying to get property taxes down. The governor, if you recall, was pushing pretty hard for deeper property tax cuts. And so they came up with a credit of 10% or a maximum of $300. So basically what that did is it brought property taxes below the 1% cap. So and unfortunately, there have been, the assessments going up have kind of lost the value of that credit, if that makes sense, because their assessments went up and their property taxes went up. And they may not have felt the benefit of it. They still got the benefit of it, but it may have been offsetting the increases in their taxes. But so that is a real loss and shouldn't change a whole lot, because for the most part, homes in in Carmel are going to be hitting the cap of $300, not the 10%. So that number's not going to fluctuate a whole lot unless they change the law. So, but that was about a $300,000 hit to the revenue. But when you look out here with the new lit model in place, you can see that surplus tightens up out here in 20, 29 and 30. So again, there's a lot of time between now and then.
And we're still at that point forecasting the increases in lit.
Yes.
So if that changes, and then the other thing to think about is our interest. We have like $1 million in interest.
Yeah,
Right,
so
interest income.
yeah, so interest income is, that's always one that's really made me pretty nervous.
Right.
In the sense that, I think everybody thought interest rates would have been going down by now. Well, that's not happening, right? So that number is a real revenue number in your budget. I can't remember the exact number. I could tell you here, I could look at the fiscal plan, but it's a real number in your budget. And, if you ever hit 08 again, that's a real number that you lose. I mean, we were getting nothing in 08 on interest. But today you're making, I think, EJ, I want to say it's like $1.5 million.
I think,
I think I
well,
got this other revenue. I can look it up here real quick. I got it in assumptions too.
it's But 26 is 1.4 million you
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And you're leaving it flat.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm leaving it flat is I don't see interest rates going down right now. You know, they're seems, nobody's talking about cuts. Nobody's talking about increases, but nobody's talking about cuts anymore. So I think for now, I think assumption. But thank you for pointing that out. There was also a positive, I guess, but will be part of the property tax reform conversation again. So debt service is used to getting some money from commercial vehicle excise tax, and FIT, financial institutions tax. And that changes in 27. You can put all that excise tax into your operating fund. And I would recommend that you do that. You can actually decide not to do that. If you want to, you probably should you should take formal action, make a decision. If that's what you want to do, is put it on the general fund. The reason I'm suggesting you put it in the general fund is because that helps make up for that $300,000 loss. So we were getting 150,000 roughly in excise tax. It's lower this year because CVIT's already been moved. So we're getting roughly 150, that'd make up half of that. Now what that does though, is there's less revenue in there to support the payment, so you raise the levy a little bit to make up for that. So, now you can change that later again. But the math on a debt fund now becomes really easy going forward because there's no other revenue going in. So whatever your payment is, that'll be your levy, that'll be your property tax levy. So your rate is actually, because your tax base is so big, it's really nothing on the tax rate. So nevertheless, like I said, in this particular case, you're not actually, you would be this first year making up for the excise tax, but going forward, you're really just asking for the same amount of money every year for the debt. And actually, EJ, we looked at the debt in 2031.
It drops.
It drops. There's a scheduled cliff out there that your debt payments go down in 31. And so you would have an opportunity to issue more bonds again without raising the debt levy. So you got a little time for that. So that's an opportunity that's out there for you coming up that you'll want to talk through, not for a few years yet, but
I mean, a conceivable scenario, one that I'd had in mind is that could have been the opportunity to, issue new bonds for a new branch. But now the other piece of it is, it's highly questionable whether we can operate a new branch. We can definitely build one, but operating it would be the concern.
yeah, that's the pressure that you would have is your operating revenue, as EJ pointed out, the interest and the decline in lit out there. So you could issue the bonds pretty easy and not have much impact, but the operating would be more of a challenge without affecting hours or pulling staff from here to go to another location. So this is the LRF fund. We've slowly been trying to get this down. Think of the LRF fund years ago as the old rainy day fund. It really doesn't have a purpose for a life. In my opinion, I share this with my clients because you have the rainy day fund. The LRF fund is actually restricted to capital. So it's very, very restrictive in use. So, but when you put money in a rainy day fund, it's more flexible. And so you always want to keep yourself nimble. You want to be able to react to things. And so you've slowly been spending this down. We had it encumbered. We had it appropriated. We encumbered $582,000. We didn't have a budget this year, but there's $617 left there.
Right.
That would be requested in the 27 budget. So you continue to spend that down. Better to spend this down than rainy day.
I was gonna say, this is where we spent, where the money comes from for the West Branch renovation.
Perfect sense.
So that's what that encumbrance is.
It's the restricted
Yeah.
use. If there, I mean, just ask maybe a dumb question, but why can't we just move the rest into rainy day?
I'd be cautious of that because it's a restricted in use.
See,
And I would not, I would just.
that would muddy the
Yeah.
waters.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
because they used to allow counties and cities and towns to move money out of their cumulative funds. Those are restricted for capital, and they stopped that. They said, you can't do that. I wouldn't try it with the LURF fund. Nobody talks about that, but you've got enough expense on capital. You could buy books out of this even. I mean, that is a legitimate expense out of here. So I'm sure you could find ways to spend this down without having to move it.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
This is the rainy day fund, and I mentioned this earlier. That you would transfer some dollars in there. You'd spend some dollars in 22, 23, and 24. That was planned. But then you have put $2 million and $3 million back in there. And so you are and continuing to appropriate dollars in your rainy day fund, but you really don't, you're not spending it. And so I'm also going to rewind back a minute to the 6-year non-farm personal income factor. It has a second meaning to it for a library. And that means your budget can't go up by more than a certain percentage. That changed. Okay, that was a change in this last session too, where it's now 50% of the 6-year non-farm personal income factor. So in our case, it's 6%. And so you can't increase your budget more than 3%. Or you would have to go to your fiscal body, which is the city, to get your budget approved. But because we have this appropriation in our rainy day, you will not have to go to the city council anytime soon because we have such a large amount appropriated. And I always tell people, think of a advertised adopted budget and think of a working budget. The working budget is I'm going to build what I want to spend around my revenue, not around what I have appropriated. And so by having that large appropriation keeps you, the library board, in control of adopting your budgets and not having to go to the city to get it approved. And so there are a lot of libraries that are concerned right now because they're not used to going to
And they don't have a large appropriation.
they don't
Right.
have it. And so there are a lot of libraries across the state, may not have a relationship with their fiscal body. And so that would be a learning curve.
Or worse, I've talked to some that do have a relationship and it's not good.
Yeah, right. That's another bad scenario.
Yeah.
So, so anyway, yeah, so you have a lot of libraries across the state. You're not one of them that are concerned because now they might get a 6% increase in their levy, but they may not be able to spend it because they can't get the budget approved to spend it. So they eventually have got to figure that out, working with their fiscal body.
And I would just point out again we received our large appropriation in 2019 and leading up to the renovation of this library. And that's why we asked the city of Carmel to approve that larger appropriation because we needed to spend from our reserves on the renovation.
Yeah, so you have obviously a relationship and you've appeared before them and they obviously love their library.
Yeah.
And so you're not quite in the same situation as
Yeah.
maybe some others. Now, tax rate wise, this doesn't look so good and probably going to look even a little bit worse. But based on the 0% assumption growth, I'm forecasting the rate obviously to increase where we're used to seeing these decreases. We're used to seeing the rate decrease. But again, when your levy goes up 6% and your AV goes down, that causes the rate to go up.
But that is by design.
It is by design. So, so anyway, and it will continue to increase because if the AV keeps going down and the levy keeps going up, the rates will increase. But even in your case with those rates increasing, homeowners' taxes are still going down because those deductions are so big that are coming off. So, higher tax rates don't necessarily mean higher tax bills right now, the way it's set up. So this is just a trend. You can see, we've we always, we managed that around it. We managed the total tax rate and it's been declining because of those big AB increases in those 3 years. But now you can see it trends back the other way under Senate Enrolled Act 1.
Yeah, I've been bragging about the decline, so I guess that
Yeah.
number.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
This is not control.
yeah. Well, until 2029, you'll be able to say we're still lower in 2029 than we are in 2020. But then after that, it gets, can't say that anymore, so. So, in summary, good news on the revenue side. The big caution flag, obviously, is that lit formula out in 2029. And just watch for legislation this next spring. There's just a lot of conversation happening around property tax. In that I was on the phone the other day with the county assessor, talking with him, and he is being somewhat under the gun for being blamed for taxes going up because the assessments are going up. And you have people saying, well, you're taxing me on unrealized gains. I haven't made that money yet and you're taxing me on that. That's an argument that's being made. You have a representative out there or a legislator out there that's trying to eliminate property tax. I think that'll be a big challenge. That's not an easy, that's a big number to make up across the state. There's lots of complexities with that.
Does it have some, does it have some momentum behind it?
Oh, there would be a lot of people that would love to see property tax eliminated, but it's, what do you replace it with? Right? I mean,
Sales tax, is that their?
well, there's a conversation about taxing services. And that would mean services like maybe about building your home, where you don't pay on that labor, you might be paying on that labor taxes. Or legal fees or consulting fees. Now you're tax exempt, you probably wouldn't have to pay taxes on services, but. Haircuts and, things where you don't have services or you don't have a service tax right now.
Hmm.
So.
There's no legs on that. It's actually been like a thing we've been talking about. Just, throughout our portfolio of apartments. But yeah, there's no legs. We've dug into this a little bit. I think the person that's been pitching it, I mean. I don't even think it's gonna make it to the committee. Is
Yeah.
what we've understood, so. I'm not saying, never, but I'm saying. For the purpose of this governing body and.
Unlikely.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a tough one to take on in this session, so that would need a lot more conversation. But nevertheless, I could see potentially more caps. Caps on how much units of government are allowed to collect. So that obviously is something out there. And there is a bit of they have a maximum lit rate of 2.9%. And that includes libraries, and this is not a problem in this county. We've got plenty of capacity of 2.9%. Right now in Hamilton County, our total lit rate is 1.1. The maximum rate is 2.9 between cities and the towns and the libraries, and so you can't have a rate more than 2.9. That is not a problem staying under the cap here. But there are places that the county and maybe the municipality will be fighting over the rate. Because the rates, if you adopt all the maximums right now, is actually more than 2.9%. So I just think there'll be more conversation about trying to fine tune this new lit model, whatever that ends up being. So stay tuned, but right now, 27, you really shouldn't have any concerns from a budget perspective. Things look good for 27. This caution flag on the lit and caution flag on what might happen in the next legislative session. So, thank you.
Is that it, Mike?
That's it.
All right, so you're gonna stay through the rest of our meeting.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna slide on.
Right, thank you as always, sir.
My pleasure.
And with that, we are off to the consent agenda. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved.
Have a second.
Second.
All right, I have a first from Chow, a second from John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So the next thing that we have on our agenda is the director's report.
Okay, that's Mike.
Have a good evening, everyone.
You too. Just a couple of things to add, I'll just note, I was contacted by a reporter from Indy Star invoking the Indiana Access to Public Records Act regarding any book challenges we've had since August of 2022, which we've only had one in that period. I consulted a little bit with Ann O'Hara before I responded, and I complied with the request. I turned over all material, which included our collection development policy, which spells out how we handle reconsideration of materials and everything else related to that one challenge. Now, I followed policy on that one challenge, but I made a decision on that, and the challenger elected to not appeal that to the board. Now, if that had been appealed to the board, we would have formed a committee and gone through a lot of other steps, but it ended with, my correspondence, which I decided to keep the book in question. So the book is still in the collection. So that happened, and I feel like I have heard reports that reporter's casting a wide net among libraries in the area. So I don't think it's going to be a story about us. We might just be a little footnote since we've just had one challenge. So there's that. I wanted to welcome Katie Muller to the board. This is her first board meeting. And I'd have to tell you, I just spoke with the Parks Director this morning, Michael Klitzing, and he really sings Katie's praises, and so did several other board members. Were almost about to, I was almost threatened that we were going to steal her, then they were going to put up a fight with us, but I assured them we're just sharing. So Katie is on the Parks Board and the Library Board, but it is really the glowing recommendations I've had from the Parks Board is impressive.
Oh,
So
thank you.
welcome.
I'm very happy to be here. So thank you.
Yeah. And I can't recall if I did this. I think I did, but I just wanted to just point out that our IT specialist, Brian Grauman, he has agreed to be sort of a permanent feature in our meeting so he can handle a lot of this tech stuff instead of me, which I think is going to work out better for all of us. But appreciate Brian being here.
Aye.
And so we'll continue him in meetings, and he'll be running the screen here.
So if he's gonna be permanent, are we gonna get him a name tag for the table?
That's really.
Make a name.
Yeah, we might as well get him a name tag.
Anything else for us, Bob?
I think that's it.
Do we have any trustee liaison reports tonight?
We do not, but our new foundation director, Jamie Medley, is with us again tonight, and
And we recognize her.
Yeah, I can just report real quick. We do have Golden League coming up, October 21st and 22nd, less than about 100 tickets. For the evening and the daytime, so out there in the world.
Anybody else? Okay, any staff reports?
no staff report tonight.
Okay. Then that teen library council report. Do I have a teen library council?
We don't,
report?
summer session, so we'll,
Oh, of course. Then we are off and running to the renovation update.
Yeah, so renovation updates are really pretty simple. We're going to replace the countertop and we have worked through that to get the countertop replaced.
Whoa.
and we're about
was
down to
advocating
just
for
that,
that.
we feel.
I'm sorry.
Are we just down to the countertop pretty
Correct.
much?
And so when?
That's kind of the next item.
That is a new business.
Bob, you want me to take it?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're proposing a closure during fall break, October 12th through the 16th. When we had a discussion with the team, everyone said that fall break was a good time to do that.
that was our branch manager, Catherine Huddle's idea,
Yep.
which is a good idea.
We will leave the book return and the book locker open And if we have an opportunity to open up earlier, we will open up earlier. But it is a custom built piece and there is quite a bit of install process that goes into changing out.
I understand it's gonna take an entire day to take it apart.
Yeah.
Maybe more, so that's why we need a week.
Personally, I'm so thrilled that we're getting the new one. I'm not even gonna say anything about the fact that it's not in top fall break. How's that?
We do have fabrication of the new material and I would just say it was a good push to get the countertop replaced. There was some costs that is going to be incurred by the contractor. He has been very willing to play ball with us and very supportive to make the library happy.
What color is the new?
Well, you know, we're going for a lighter color because it just hides the scratches better, and we have lighter colored desks here at Main Library, and they look nice. If you have to really look close to see the scratches, the black, it just jumps out at you. So we're gonna go for that, but one of the things we're waiting on is a larger sample so we can make a final selection. We kind of have a final 4 or 5, but we want those large samples so we can lock in the best one.
Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. So are there any items of old business? Other than welcoming Miss Katie, any other items of new business? Other than the West Branch countertop replacement, which we just discussed.
Yes, and the ask is to approve a closure on the week of October 12 through 16.
Do I have a motion to
So
that?
moved.
I have a first by Chow. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second by Katie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can we do
Second.
that by consensus?